Welcome, everyone, and good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today's session, we're in lesson 3. This is about the product development life cycle. And so we've looked at, the history of product management and how it developed to where we are today. And this is what I don't like doing. We have 15 minutes, and yet some people are still late. We've looked at the history of product development life cycle, and we've seen the historical development to where we are today, and that has seen a rise in the demand for product managers in the market. If you are a business in today's world, there's a high chance that you are a technology business. If you don't know that, if as a company you didn't know that, then how you usually find out is when you have no customers, because every business you need technology to enhance your product offerings. So your platforms, your systems, the more you do so effectively, it's how you get to serve customers really well. So essentially, in today's session, we're going to cover the product development lifecycle and how you can really enhance your company, your product offering, and how you can do so in a way that is sustainable and delivers value to your customers. So in today's society, we live in a world of platforms and systems. Amazon has a great platform. You go on Amazon.com, we can test it out. Amazon.com. This is a global site. Wow. Wants me to confirm. Go on Amazon.com, and this is a platform. So, but they have various systems that work together.
Your screen is not showing. Your screen.
Okay. Can you all see my screen? And it says, okay. So this is Amazon.com, and on this platform, it's an amazing e-commerce platform, and it's a platform that feeds off of several sub-platforms and systems, and by so doing, it's helping Amazon to deliver value to customers. So you have a variety of choices, and as a product manager, Amazon doesn't only just have one product managers, they have various. So if I go on product manager on Amazon, this is where Amazon puts their role, and there'll be plenty. I mean, in the US alone, at the moment there are 475 roles available. In India, 129. In Japan, 93. Luxembourg, and they're all working on the same. That's not even the full, the full scope of it. So Amazon has several product roles available. There are some that are very technical, and there are some that are non-technical. Hence, you have non-tech, and they're all the same. The super technical roles. Okay, here it is. 946 open, roles, but that includes project, program, and product management. So Amazon classifies them pretty much because the skill sets that you have to be a product, program, and project manager quite similar. Nevertheless, there are some differentiations, as we've uncovered in our last session. However, it's all about adding value to customers. How do you, as a product manager, come in here and help Amazon to add value to the UK market, because I'm currently in the UK. If I was somewhere else, let's say Japan, then Amazon has a team in Japan that tailors its website, this platform, to deliver value for its Japanese customers. So imagine this, and the text will be different for starters. It won't be in English. So that makes it very different. So the interface, the UI, the experience, everything changes. So how do you do so in a manner that allows, your users to enjoy coming back to shop? So when we say product development lifecycle, these are some of the things we have to ponder over. We have to make decisions on all of these choices. And that's what leads to thinking more strategic. So making strategic choices and, making the choices that will lead to customer retainment, and also how do you acquire new customers? Because if Amazon fails to acquire new customers, guess what? Your competitors will grab the market. So let's begin. In the product development lifecycle, it's a bunch of activities that you have to do in order to deliver value to your customers. And it starts with the idea conception. So from the moment an idea is introduced by some, and there are various ways to get these ideas. One of the ways could be through research. Last week we discussed how market research leads to the evolution of ideas. Market research speaks with customers to understand what are the key challenges, the core challenges that customers are experiencing. And then once you understand those core challenges, it becomes, how do we turn them into opportunities for the business, for the company? We look at, for example, I'm going to use Amazon as an example today. We look at Amazon and we say, what are some of the experiences that customers are finding difficult? And then that's what research could be very narrow, to look at, for example, the UI, the user experience, the interface. How is it? Is it easy to use? And so you dig deeper. So the research team will come up with a bunch of questions and would, define a number. If you're doing a qualitative research, qualitative, so it's not about quantity. So there's a point of saturation that it's always used, and that's between 10 and 16. And point of saturation there just means after you speak with 16 people, you'll find that whatever they tell you is not going to be any new information than you've already heard from 16 people. So that's what's known as point of saturation. It becomes the same. The feedback that you get will not be too dissimilar. So you can start making inferences for a population and say, well, having spoken to 16 people, we can infer that, the customer experience on Amazon.com is not great. So we can infer that on the population. And then if you're doing, and so as you can infer that on the population, then that becomes a problem statement. So you use that as a guide for your product development lifecycle. And then you can form a project on that. And in that project, you then bring on a product manager who then owns that problem and says, my role for this product, you call it a product, but for this particular problem we're trying to resolve, my role is to solve this problem and to make our platform easily accessible. And so you start narrowing down into, core business cases, and we'll go through that as we go through this framework itself. And then the other means of obtaining information from customers is a quantitative base analysis. And that's doing things like surveys. You can send a survey to over 2,000 people, as many as you want. And then you start using, several more sophisticated analysis, like, your stats, to draw some stats and, draw some correlations. And the more correlations you can make to support, what you're looking for. So what data are you trying to obtain? And then you can make that data to tell that story, because that's what you're doing. or you can discover, you can let the data tell you the story. And then once you get, by story I mean the problem, the data can tell you the problem. So you look at the data, it appears, for example, you can say it appears people are having problem with our checkout. We've seen from the data that not many people are checking out or adding items to the basket. And so as a result, that means we have to do a project to optimize our basket and shopping cart. And once we do that, we can, optimize it, and then we can test it. How many people are checking out since we've done, the project, since we've done the optimization? And we can compare. By comparing, it tells us that whether our project was successful or it wasn't. So let's go. So in entirety in itself, the product management lifecycle, product development lifecycle, however you want to refer to it, it means the same thing. You have the ideation, the development, the testing, and the release. The ideation, as I've just alluded, you have various ways to get those ideas, whether in market research. It could be an executive in the company saying, actually, I went for dinner last week and one of our major client said they were having problems with something on our website. Let's look into it. And you get someone in the development team to have a look, and behold, there's a problem. That becomes a project. So there are various ways to come up with a project and to come up with ways to optimize our platform. So for Amazon, they have several. They have the market research team, they have the R&D, research and development team, they have the product team itself. As a product team, the beginning of the year, like right now, you have a meeting, you set goals for the year. Maybe our goal is to have more users on our platform. How do we do so? Then we look at legacy problems that have existed on, let's say we are the Amazon team. I work in Amazon as a product manager, solely focusing on Amazon cart, because that's what happens. You have various product managers working in various parts of the website. So you have well over 200 members of product managers just focusing on very specific pain points. And it could be someone focused on their accounts. Their role is just to ensure that people can create an account, people can sign in, and so you define various ways. So your role as a product manager for Amazon is to help ensure that this is as pain-free as possible. And in turn, they will also have various engineering members who just focus on Amazon account. It looks very simple, but trust me, some of the decisions that go into building this, it's incredible. It takes a while. I learned this from my experience with the BBC. The BBC has people just focus on accounts, just to sign in, all of that. And we had well over 500 product managers. And you have BBC for children, you have BBC for adults, you have BBC for young adults. So that makes it all very complex. And the business logic that go behind, it's very intense. And so you can imagine Amazon in being such a much bigger platform. So you have a lot of PMs on the team, and so the roles will then be very specific. And that's why once you understand the principles of product management, these are transferable skills. You can work for any company in tech. So that's one way to unpack ideas. You can unpack from market research, from team's own development goals, and it could also be from any other department in the company. The finance team or the legal team can come in and have their own agendas for the year, and those are all ideas on how you can get some ideation. And then you then prioritize those ideas and think which of these ideas would help us satisfy customers' needs the most. And once you do so, then you start going into your development. But the ideation involves really scoping out all of the ideas into not just saying we have, at the very top level, we want to optimize our, sign-in process, or we want to optimize our checkout process, or we want to optimize our, how items are listed. If someone comes on Amazon, for instance, and searches for an item, how can they view, like, this is all very good, but how do you optimize this? I search for a let's say bottle of water, so you can see, like, are these relevant? So there's a team that deals with, search from a relevance perspective. I just search for a bottle of water and I'm getting, it's not the water itself, I'm getting, more containers. So how relevant is this? So the team does all this searching, and in turn you have to prioritize. Is this something that we care the most for our customers, or should we spend our energy in, in a project that would have a bigger impact on, on the overall team? So essentially what I'm saying there is there's a prioritization that goes on, because the accounts team may come to us with a bigger project that will have a bigger impact, or the search team, as you can see, they come to us and say, actually, we need your help on this project to optimize our search, so it brings more relevant, it surfaces more relevant results to customers. Then we can then prioritize and say, actually, we believe the search would have a bigger impact on our OKRs, on our goals and objectives for the year. As a result, we can, choose to ideate on the search, team's project, and in turn, the sign-in team's project or the accounts team project becomes on the back burner. That's something we'll pick up if we have time during the year. So, but in turn, so it's just to give you, a very high level view of, of this framework itself. So in ideation, development is where you actually, go into the coding. Of course, as product managers, we don't do coding. We just support in ensuring that we're building the right thing and we're following the right systematic processes, and ensuring that we're also, testing it. And then that's working with the, your QA, your quality assurance testers, and not just, them, but also your automation testers, ensuring that, that actually how we release things to the market, we're doing it properly. There's a platform that everyone will need to get an account on. We'll look through this in our next session. This is how every product, every platform that you build, every company that you in tech, if you don't have GitHub, I don't know how you launch things to customers. These are some of the companies that use. They're the most trusted in the industry. So the likelihood of you being able to use this platform is zero, because you won't be trusted with code. But it's good to have an understanding. If you show up in an interview and you say you help the team, your testers, to ensure that they're optimizing, that the testing processes on GitHub are great, whoever's listening to you will understand that you're really involved in the product management lifecycle. You're not someone that just stops in ideation. You're someone that goes through the entire thing. And so when it comes to release, and that's where GitHub really comes into, force, where is after the idea is, after the product itself is tested, it has to be released. And then that gets released into the market. And, how you release sometimes, you can release 10%, you can release to 10%. If Amazon wants to release a product, they won't release to every single customer. That's how you get, problems, because it can shut down the entire site if there's a fault, if there's a bug. So how you release to 10% of the population on Amazon. And then progressively, once it gets to 50% and you see that there aren't any problems on the platform, then you slowly, again, incrementally, until you get to 100. Again, these are things that you can, articulate in an interview to show that you have been involved. in the entire process itself. And we don't just tell you to go say these are things you're involved in, because you will have the hands-on experience of being involved in it and actually doing things in all of these processes. So you will be able to explain from a doing perspective rather than a saying, just something you've learned. So don't worry. Let's further break down what it means for you as a PM in all of these 4 stages. So the first one, idea generating, that's the ideation. As a PM, your role is to evaluate various solutions. As I said earlier, you would have a bunch of ideas come to you or come to your product team. You don't just accept to do any ideas. There has to be a means of evaluating, to evaluate, which means to assess, to choose one over another. How do you choose which idea to focus on? And remember, as a PM, you're always thinking, how can I add more value to my users? And if it's all about value add, then that means you have to evaluate which idea would help you to add more, to resolve more pain points for your customers. As I said earlier as well, on Amazon, every PM doesn't just do everything. So PMs have focus. There's a PM that focuses on search, so that they will have several PMs. Search is a massive project. It isn't easy. And accounts, as I also said, is a massive project. So you have subsections. Amazon will be split into several sub functions. And so when you say I'm a PM, when someone tells you they're a PM, I'll give you a trick. You should ask them, so what do you focus on? And then you can listen to what they tell you. If you work as a PM for Google, for example, what do you do for Google? Do you work in the maps? Do you work for YouTube? Do you work for search? So there's several functions within any business that you join. This is how in small groups, that's how you deliver value. And that's the whole point of being agile. If everyone is working on the same thing, then you're slow. So you deliver value in small units. And by so doing, you end up with a bigger, value to your customers. So in ideation is a PM's, job to really have an idea and a grasp of, what are all the ideas available. So you can, and this is where you're championing. Let's say you're a PM, you're a product consultant who's just been brought in at Amazon, and they've told you to help them to optimize their search, their search engine. Yeah, so that whatever you search, that it brings you things that are more, so your search relevant. Amazon is aware that they have a problem with this, and they want to optimize it. That's just one idea, so it's your role then to champion that. Speak to several functions within the business. You speak to the legal. What are some legal implications of this optimization? You speak to finance. We want to do this. What is the financial impact? And then you get all those ideas. And once those ideas have been, gotten for that idea, and then you can put it down on one side and then do the same for a different, ideation that you have, because you have several ideas. So you have to champion all of the ideas. And once you do so, then you can then finalize them and say, of these, for example, 5 ideas, which of them is more value add to our users? Which of them resolves more pain points? As a PM, you're always focused on pain points. You want to make customers' lives easier. Whatever makes their lives easier is what will retain them. If Amazon fails to do its job, then some people turn over to eBay. We don't want that. As PMs on Amazon, we want to retain our users. In fact, we want to steal eBay's customers. Come on over to Amazon. So we do so by resolving lots of pain points, making our site simple, easy to use, And by doing so, we will get more and more users and will retain a lot more customers. So, having thought from that perspective, we can choose one idea that will please our customers the most. That's the idea that resolves the most pain point. And then we start to finalize what features within that idea to build. So, for example, if we're going to, make Amazon search, if we're going to optimize this search, Amazon search engine, let's optimize it so it displays more items that are relevant to what the search keyword is. That's a project, right? And there's several projects you can do. That's one way. Is it searching by pictures? That's a project in itself, or is it voice search? I don't see voice search here, so Amazon doesn't have voice search. So that's another thing that we could do. We are in the world of AI at the moment, machine learning. How do you optimize things? How do you make it so easy that anyone can use search on Amazon? Because that's the entry point. This is how Amazon gets to close customers. You have to search first, unless you came externally from a link outside of Amazon. So this is key for Amazon, hence why it occupies so much space at the top. If I go on home, it's still there. It's constant. When you keep things here, it just means it's a key revenue driver. And so from our perspective, one project could be, let's do a search by voice. That could be it. And then we start thinking, what are some of the features that would be included in that? And then move on to the next phase, design and discovery. So if our product and project is going to be a voice search, then in the design and discovery, then here we as product managers, we need to understand, the market. And so really, let's define some user personas. Personas are a way that we think of the population, because every person is different. Everyone is different, but we all have one thing. We have some things in common, and those can be categorized into patterns. So what are some of the trends that could be observed from the population? And then we start grouping them into, archetypes. And by so doing, we end up with personas. And a persona would describe, group of people and help us to think on how to really optimize that voice search. What would these people want to see? If, for example, a persona is about people that are really tech savvy, then that would influence how we design the UI for, the voice search. So it could be that we just put a small voice icon here. That could be it. Or it could be that it could be a text. Right now it says search Amazon. It could be just a simple enhancement of this text, search Amazon by voice. And people that are tech savvy may see that, and immediately they're prompted to test it out, to try it. And you see them saying, like on Siri or on your Amazon Echo, for instance, you say something and it does the search for you. So it could be the same idea here, that you simply say it out loud and it searches. So these are all some of the features that you could do, but you do so using personas. The people that you're thinking of designing this for, how would they be able to interact? So you have them in mind. And then you also do something else. You conduct market research, as we've alluded to. We know how that's done now. Quantitative or qualitative. You analyze your competitors, how are they in the market? And then you work with designers, to really understand and define the user journey on how to build a top-notch experience. So here you essentially, when you do a competitor analysis, that could be a benchmark. You find one competitor that does it really well, and that gives you a benchmark for what your product, the experience you produce, it must match it. If it doesn't match it, it must surpass. It definitely cannot be below. And that's where you put your resources and you use the team's discovery time to really unpack this. So when you hear design and discovery, it's all about trying to understand what you want to develop, and really go dig deep to build user personas. You conduct some market research, you analyze what already exists in the market. How do those products look like? For example, competitor research doesn't have to be, something within the e-commerce space. It could be looking at, for example, something like google.com. Right, you can see here, that's a voice search. That could be an example. You can see how they've done it here. They've also got search by image, which Amazon has. They've not done much to it. They've just included just that. So the team could say, well, let's just add a search icon next to that. And that could be sufficient. And that's the whole project done. It then becomes a design, team's decision on how to make that icon look. And you can see the image here, search by image. That looks different to this. This is more colorful. These are all designed decisions. So you don't get involved. You just focus on the requirement, which is we need to have a way for customers to search by image or search by voice. If that's a requirement, you just hold the team responsible. You don't tell them how to do it. As a PM, you care about the outcome more than you care about, the way to get there. Conscious that I've been talking for a while. Any questions? Any questions so far? Okay, great. Move on to the next phase, which is the development and testing phase. So once a team has determined which features to build, as a PM, you literally, once you've got those, key features. So for example, you want to build a feature that allows people to, to search by voice on Amazon. You then, define that, really, put in the details. So you will then work with, the likes of business analysts to define user stories and acceptance criteria. We will cover this. Everyone in this team will become an expert at writing user stories and acceptance criteria. So not to worry. When we get to that session, you'll get the hands-on experience. But you will be involved in writing those user stories and acceptance criteria. So the way it's done in the industry is, as a product manager, you can just write the user stories if you want, or you can, this is where you can, delegate. You can delegate these responsibilities to the business analyst in the team. So the business analyst in the team will be then responsible for writing the user stories and acceptance criteria and facilitating that work to be done with the development and testing team. So your responsibility then is to oversee. You will then, review the business requirements, the use cases, if any, the user stories and the acceptance criteria. And you do so, if you have no idea how user stories are written or acceptance criteria are written, how then could you review? So this is why, it's great for you to, be an expert at writing these. And they aren't difficult to, to learn. We'll master them in our class. And so because you're an expert at writing them, you will then be able to review and say, yes, these are all accurate, they make sense, go ahead and you approve them. And the team then takes these requirements into, the development phase, where they will go through the sprint cycles. The sprint cycles it's a way of development. This is a Scrum, agile approach. So every 2 weeks, the team picks a piece of work and they work on it. And at the end of it, they showcase to you as the product manager. You then, or the product owner in some cases, they showcase these to you, and then you can say, yes, I'm liking what I'm seeing. If you're not liking what you're seeing, you can provide more details, and then the business analyst can take your feedback and communicate it via user stories and acceptance criteria. And then that feedback is taken in if you strongly believe things should be changed. Change is expensive. So we try not to change things that don't make massive impact. So the key then is in the development and testing phase, you're more in the role of a delegator, but a delegator that has insight on how things are done. So you know how user stories are written, you know how acceptance criteria are written, you understand how developers, their process is, which is a agile approach. And that simply means, they take business cases and user stories into a sprint planning. It's just a meeting where they plan, okay, what are we going to do over the next 2 weeks? And then that's where the user stories and acceptance criteria are planned to say let's say you have 2 engineers, 2 developers, software developers. They will tell you, well, I can take this exact piece of work, and I think it will take me 2 weeks to complete it. And that's it. That's what the planning is all about, is ensuring that everyone has enough to do during 2 weeks. And then they will then demo that stuff that they delivered in that 2 weeks to you. And then you can, chip in feedback if there is any. But essentially, in this stage of the product development life cycle, the details of requirements are clarified with yourself and with the business analyst, and ensure that the team has a full understanding and knowledge of what they're implementing. So once a feature is implemented, it's always about having a shippable value. So shippable value is what you do to ensure that, you don't just develop things and keep them. And then let's say a project is going to take 12 months to be completed. Every 2 weeks, you ship something that is not shippable to users. So users cannot use it. That's waterfall model. That's not what tech companies do these days. You do the agile approach. So a shippable model will be, okay, we're going to focus on something that we can, at the end of 2 weeks, we can actually release this to the market and people can start using it. Using the release approach I mentioned earlier, 10% of the population, 20%, 30%, slowly. So if there are bugs, you can pull it out, you can pull it back and test it properly. So always about delivering value at the end of every 2 weeks. So that's the agile delivery cycle, and that's known as sprint cycles. And in the launch then, here it's all about, let's say you're launching, remember as I said, you're launching every 2 weeks, really. And here you're all about helping marketing, the marketing teams to really understand what features have just been implemented in that 2 weeks and how they can have a understanding of it, because they won't be able to promote something they have no idea how it works. So in this case, as a PM, you help your product marketing managers. In some places they call them product marketing managers, in others they just call them marketers or marketing team or marketing managers. So forget titles. As you all know, titles sometimes can be convoluted. So pay no attention to titles, but it's like, what is the function that this person actually does, and how do they add value through the product launch phase. So some of them will be all about creating a buzz, and so your role is to just help them to understand what the product does, and that's it. And then they will do the rest. They will take the product to the market and ensure that, if, for example, Amazon, when a feature is released, how do they ensure that people can see it? So if I am part of that population, that 10% population that will get to see that feature, because sometimes Amazon releases a feature and only few people can see it. That's because they're releasing slowly to a population. And if I am part of that population that gets to see it, there will be some prompts to teach me how to use it. That's something that your product marketers, that's what they do. and they make it easier for me to learn, and then suddenly it becomes, a habit once I understand how it's done. So as your role as a PM, it's really important that you act as a facilitator during this phase. It's not about you doing the work. You facilitate that these launches are successful, because at the end of the day, you are the PM. You own the entire journey. So you're bringing them in to ensure that you can serve your customers. You own your customers' happiness. So it's vital that everything that you do is taught as from adding value to your end users. So in the visual representation of that life cycle, just unpacking a little bit more, you will have research, which I mentioned earlier, and then you plan, you build, you launch, you analyze. How was that launch? How are people using that feature? Are we now getting more searches on Amazon.com as a result of adding voice search? So now we're trying to get data. We get data. If we are people using it as we intended? If there aren't, are there any new insights that we can take? If there are any new insights, we take the new insights, we iterate. That means we go back. We find, a way to optimize. And this, as a PM, is what you consistently do. Finding ways to optimize and add value to your end users. And what does that look like from a product perspective? So you have, if you were to break this down into smaller phases, because you always hear innovation. What does that really mean? Think of, then you move on to the next phase, your analysis. You don't just innovate. You think of an innovative idea, you go into analysis, then comes development, then there's go to market, then here is the lifetime of the product. And then it gets to a point actually where Amazon says, we don't like this feature anymore, we're going to get rid of it. And that's known as the end of life. You cut it out, you no longer support it, because you have an advanced way of doing things, and that will slowly be cut through the population. The same way you release is the same way you cut down your products, your end of life processes. So you cease support for the first 10%, but of course you have to let people know way in advance, and then you see support for the next 20%, 30%, slowly, progressively, until that feature is dead, is no longer supported. But we'll go through these separately so you understand what happens in each of these. This is a bigger, remember, I'm giving you frameworks here so you can, when you join a company, you have an idea of what can be done at each of these phases. And then you see how things are done. And then, of course, you have the idea, the knowledge from the practice that we will do to be able to, take that in and master the craft of it. So we begin with the innovation phase. Innovation, every company wants to be innovative. And your role as a PM is to ensure that, whatever company you join, innovative ideas are being brought to the forefront, and at all times ensuring that, customers, when they come to your platform, they're getting that top experience, because that's what keeps people, returning. The reason why some people will only use an iPhone or would only use, a MacBook and some of these innovative products or platforms, or whether it's a website, is because they're very innovative in how they do things. And innovation doesn't just mean, a physical product. It also means how things are delivered to customers and how things are utilized. So the focus on the innovative stage is really in creating and prioritizing ideas. So you have a bunch of ideas that would be on the fold, and your role there as a PM is all about how do we not just solicit ideas, but how can we prioritize them? So you develop a bunch of frameworks. So you think of cost as being one. How expensive is it to implement this idea? And then second could be value add to customers. What is the value to customers? What is the value to the business? And these are all the things, these are all the variables that you could use to help you prioritize. And in terms of prioritization, when we get to that class, there's a framework that I'll give to you. And it's a framework that will help you think this out. So you never have to, sit there and try to remember cost of development or value to customers. There's a framework that you literally put. It's called RISE. And the RISE framework just literally gives you a way. You plug in all of the projects to your left, going down, and then you put a score on each of the attributes. And at the end, it will tell you what project to focus on. And it's something that's very systematic. So you need not worry about if someone challenges you, how come we're focusing on the first item on the list? You say, well, based on all of these core attributes, it seems this is what will deliver the most value to our users. And that's the prioritization phase. And that's that done. And then if that idea then gets selected as the most innovative idea that we could, uncover for customers, then in the end, you test it. As I just said here, you iterate, you analyze the results, and then you iterate. Was it worth the effort, the cost? If it is, then that's good. And move on to the next idea. So this process also involves, developing an initial value proposition to customers. And that means it's not delivering everything from design. It doesn't mean going through all of these key processes. It's a theoretical exercise where you hypothesize. You say, if we build, for example, if we build a voice search function, so our designers will help us, we'll stick like a voice icon here, and they say, if we add this here, what is the impact on our search? Does it lead to more searches? Does it reduce the number of people that search? Does it create confusion? So these are things that you can hypothesize. So in our case, we can say we hypothesize that, if we add a voice icon here, we would have more searches, we'll have more people interacting with our search, and we will make more revenue as a result of that. How do we know this? We need to then do the test. So a designer can create a mock-up of this. A mock-up just means it's a wireframe that shows this landing page. And so it shows this website. And then you show this to some customers. So and then you get their feedback. Said, if we add this here, how does that help you to search? So each person you show, you write down their response. So this is called testing. So you're testing it out and you get those feedback. In the end, you analyze the feedback. And if it happens that, they agree with your hypothesis, because remember, you hypothesize that by adding this, you're going to have more interaction with the search, and it's going to also have a positive impact on revenue for the company. If that's the case, then that's something you can go ahead. You can push it forward from the innovation phase. It can be the chosen idea, because remember, you have a bunch of ideas. And, so the hypothesis and testing will also help you to confirm your decision. And that's known as being data driven. You've gotten data from people, and you've got some hypothesis. So your thinking is not being led by emotions. It's being very strategic, and you're going to end up uncovering a product that could really deliver value to customers, because it's all about uncovering customer needs and resolving those, deep pain points that they have. So once you do that, this can then go ahead. So some checklists that could be, useful to know, which is do we get enough insights from customers and prospects? In order for you to do the innovation phase, if you don't have a culture of getting feedback from customers, then as a PM, if you join a company, you said, well, where is our feedback that we get from customers? That could be one of the questions you ask. Even in an interview, while you're being interviewed, you could say, how do we get feedback from customers? How do we know how we are doing with customers? How do we know that they're satisfied with our product? And these kinds of questions will prompt people to think of your candidacy very differently. And you're showing them that you put customers first. And that's key. That would make you stand out in a lot of interviews. And even when hired, when you speak with people, it's always about how do you know that you are implementing the right thing? These are some questions that you can ask. And these questions would also help you to understand in case there is a project coming up, you know how to quickly get up to speed because you will know why the project or the product has come to be. You will read customer problems, and those will really help you to understand why the company wants to optimize the platform, and really put you in a place that you can actually add value immediately. So, and then something else you can also ask is, do we track competitor launch plans and activities? Launch plans is tough because most companies don't share those, but you can ask for do we even monitor our competitors? Do we look at what they do, and how often do we do so? Do we systematically collect and evaluate and prioritize ideas? In most companies you join, they always have these surveys going around the company. Do you have any ideas? In most companies as well, they also do what's known as a hackathon. A hackathon is a whole day of people just bringing ideas on how we can optimize the whole company. How can we do things better? That's known as a hackathon. And most companies do this. A lot of tech companies do them. And lastly, you can ask, do we do enough discovery activities? Most companies, the senior leadership, wakes up in the morning and says, I don't like our product. We need to change it. And we need to do it how I think it should be done. That's not good. Those are very bad companies. It's like Jeff Bezos on Amazon waking up and saying, actually, we need to remove this search from here. Jeff Bezos doesn't use this. He is not close to customers. So he doesn't know. So if he uses his authority as the owner of the company to impose such a decision, then it leads to companies delivering really uninnovative products. But these are the checklists. So by asking, do we do enough discovery? You can uncover how ideas are taken and implemented. The next phase, analysis then. In analysis phase, we focus on, really getting an understanding on, some financial metrics such as cost, opportunity cost as well. If we choose to invest in delivering one feature or one product over another, is that the right time to do that product? Could we wait? So these are some of the things that we do, and we validate these ideas by doing testing. If we can have the design team produce wireframes and mock-ups that will be tested with customers, and the idea that tends to bring the most value to customers based on our hypothesis, that idea can then move forward. So the team cannot be taking ideas based on feelings, based on an executive saying we need to do this project or this product. That's not great. So it involves bringing in your designers, your UX designers or your visual designers, for them to create some visuals. So that's prototypes, and those are then shown to customers to really obtain feedback from them. And once you get that, you can start going through the business justification to justify the investment. Why should the company invest in, for the sake of Amazon, I've been using this example, why should the company invest in putting a search by voice icon here? why should they invest in that? Because it's not free. It means a designer will have to sit down and think of it. Is this the best place to put it? Could we put it somewhere else? That's that's resources, and it isn't as simple as doing it in a few hours. It will take days, if not weeks and months, and then you need a business analyst to come in and then scope out the requirements, think about existing platforms, what backend systems would need to support this. That's the key. That's the key difficulty there. And then you bring in your engineers to think what backend search systems will need to support it. And then you start thinking of developing and releasing. So it's resources. Why should we dedicate our resources into, building this feature and not building something else? So we need to make a strong business case as to why that should be done. And so in the analysis phase, these are some of the things that we'll be doing. And then of course, the key area of writing the requirements. This is from the product owner or the product manager. In myself, it could be I as a product manager would just write a high level problem statement. We need to optimize, and the problem statements could read, we need to optimize our search on Amazon.com, and how to do so could be we need to add a voice search so we can capture a larger population who are excluded from searching as a result of not being able to either search by text or search by image. So these people could just speak to it and then they search. So we capture more people into the market. So I can give that context, and then the product owner or the business analyst can take that context and transform it into user stories and acceptance criteria. And that is where writing the requirements comes into place. So with an internal development team can then take it and start looking at how to move it forward into the development phase. But some checklists for us to do here could be are representatives from all affected business areas involved. That's key. Remember I said that if you are going to add a voice search here, this will impact lots of systems within Amazon. So you need representative from those systems to be involved, because they may not have, plans to work on anything related to search this year. So you need to plan that well in advance for them, because without them being involved, it isn't just stick a voice search icon here and that's it, it's done. And that's where as a PM, you champion it. You speak to your first thing is to identify what are all the platforms that a voice search would impact. You have that list down. It could be 10 different teams. And then you look at the PMs in those teams. And then you have a meeting with each of them. Or you can have group meetings. And, you kill multiple, birds with one stone. Where you inform them of the idea and where it's come from. And then they will then chip in. And some of them will tell you, I don't have resource to support this project. And that's the part of being a PM that's arguably more difficult is the people management. How do you build and maintain strong relationships? Because in the technical hard skill, which we're covering, these things, you do them once or twice, you will master them. But one thing that becomes difficult to, really, you can say are fully mastered is people, because people are different. So how do you ensure you can, persuade people to do something that's actually good for the company? Because they may be against it for whatever reason. So now is your prerogative to persuade them. How do you persuade them to, add value in a project that would help the whole company? So you work on not only your hard technical skills, but also your soft skills. And that's what, you use those soft skills in analysis phase. And then next, we look at, do we engage customers in reviewing ideas? Sometimes engaging doesn't mean you go bring them in, but it could mean, have you had market research? Have you spoken to customers, to understand where they are and what are their pain points? And then next, you think, is there a clear decision-making process to build buy or partner. And this just means in some cases you do what's known as outsource. You think of, your voice search, and you say, well, our teams are all busy during the period of 2024. So you know what? Let's outsource this to a consultancy. And that consultancy would then come in and build this for you. Sometimes it's cheaper to do so than to build it yourself. So, and that's known as the outsource versus build, decision. So you buy it or you build it yourself. And in which case, how do you do that? Is there a clear decision-making process? You don't just say, we're going to buy this or we're going to make this. How do you make those decisions? And as a PM, you're there to facilitate those decisions. If you have a team that is not so busy, you can say, well, actually, we have enough capacity to do this ourselves. So in that case, you can build it if you truly do. And if you don't, you can, use the investment to buy it. Okay, and in the development phase then, we look at, here is just essentially all about how do we build what we've identified. So we've come here in an innovative stage. We think about, we're going to be very innovative in 2024. We had multiple ideas and we rounded down into one because we prioritize based on the framework that the key attributes that we care about: customer, cost, revenue, value to customers. Based on these, core labels, we said voice search was going to be the best product. This is just an example. And so you move on, you analyze your voice search and you capture the requirements, and then you come to the development phase. As a PM then, my focus is on ensuring that the requirements, that's the user stories, acceptance criteria, are well written. They make sense. I don't want the team wasting resources in trying to rebuild things. That's not great. So I ensure that those are very clear, that anyone in the business can read them and they will understand what we're trying to get done. So the focus of the development stage is on getting requirements delivered. That means build it and deliver it to users. And it also involves honing some of the requirements, as a result of new insights that's uncovered by the development team or from the market. Sometimes you write requirements here and you say, well, this is all we know for now. And then come 3 days later, it could be that we now know new things. Because we have new information, we have to adapt. So, we have to evolve these requirements as a result of new market insights. So we add to it or we take away. So it's not the process of just addition. We also remove. So this is key. And as a BA, as a business analyst in the team, you work with them because this is their role to always, look out for the market and see whether, the requirements that have been added, they make sense. It could also be that in the systems that already exist, the legacy systems, maybe a new requirement wouldn't be fit for purpose. So if such a discovery has been made, then a new requirement that already exists will need to be removed. So here is just making sure that we're building things that make sense. So just being pragmatic, very important. And lastly, this also involves some trade-offs being made: scope, time, market, quality. These are the usual, suspects. If your scope is too much and your project is for 3 months and you have too much scope, then you're not going to deliver on time. So you always have to think, what is the speed to market? So time to market, what is the quality, and what is the cost? So you have to make trade-offs between these things. Sometimes, as a result of these trade-offs, you reduce the requirements that you had, and that impacts scope. So you reduce the requirements just to help you deliver your product, to market on time, to maintain a high quality, and to keep the cost down. So in this phase, as a PM, you're always keeping an eye on what's happening. And if the team complains that we have too much to do, then you come in with the insights of the market to say, right, based on the overall goal of the project, we can reduce some of these requirements, and that should help us get to market on time. Once the product has been developed, then this stage also involves the testing and the demos. You need to demo to several stakeholders, and in most cases the team would do this with your presence. So you would have to be in those meetings with several business stakeholders, so you can always articulate the value to our users, the value to the organization, the value to our revenue. So you are just championing at this phase and ensuring that everyone understands and things aren't being shut down in your absence. So you have to be involved. Here you have to be really diplomatic and ensuring that the right conversations are being had. Because some people can come into these meetings and start stirring up, the pot, in which case you then have to be on point to be able to, shut down some conversations that won't be adding value, and then having those conversations off platform, as off that meeting. And so some checklists for you to do in this phase. Are the product roles clear and agreed with the development and design teams? That means, is everyone clear on what they are doing? The designers need to be designing. The developers need to be building, actually coding. The UX experience designers need to be, designing the user experience. And when people have clear roles, it leads to success. And as a PM, as a product manager, you need to ensure that, whenever you go to meetings, you're observing that, dynamics are being, followed, and dynamics that, you observe won't impact customers, because if it does, then ultimately it won't be great, because it's going to lead to products being delivered late, and that impacts your overall goals for it. And just pick on one here. Let's say testing. In testing, is quality assurance taken seriously, and is sufficient time allocated to fix issues that are identified? It's a major one. Throughout my experience, you find that sometimes the engineers will take maybe 80-90% of the time and then just allocate 10% to QA people to test, which is not great. 10% of the time to test, that means some of the issues that are identified won't be fixed. And this is why when it comes to releasing things in the population, they'll follow that 10%, 20% that I alluded to earlier. You don't just release, because testing isn't done as well as it should be in most companies. So the process, the product development lifecycle, really is about identifying your innovative idea and taking it from, one of the many steps, taking it from literally from your researching, plan, build, launch, analyze, iterate. It's going through a holistic system to ensure that how you deliver your innovative ideas is not something that it's out of luck. You followed a systematic process, and as a result, you can always redo it. If you did it for one idea, you can do it for another idea. That's the idea of that framework, that it gives you a predictable way of delivering value to customers. So throughout the stages, as a PM, you act as the voice of the customers. That means in conducting market research and surveys to understand the user's pain points and determine the solutions to address. So always as a PM, you need to have in mind, you represent the customers. As you represent the customers, you need to always know what is your pain point. If you suggest a solution, you need to know why you suggested it. If you know why you suggested it, then it adds a lot of value, because you can persuade people. As I said, the soft skill of being able to be persuasive is critical as a PM. You come in and you say, we need to optimize our landing page, and someone says, no, we don't. I don't think we do. We have other priorities that we need to focus on. You need to have a way of being able to collectively and strategically dismantle that argument and say, no, this is going to impact our revenue more. So you use, you use all the data that is available to you to do so. So it's always about focusing on the voice of the customers, the pain points, and using that to really drive whatever solution was chosen. And another example of how people sometimes look at this is that it's split into two. So there's a discovery and there is a delivery. And in the discovery, you have things like the lean UX canvas. There's a prototype. You use so in terms of identifying opportunities, you can use the customer discovery, data analysis, market and competitive research, product vision document. MOSCO is a prioritization framework and non-negotiables. So you use this to identify how you could add value to customers. Could be data analysis, just looking at research that was done, or looking at how customers use your product, and analyzing those data points could help you to identify new opportunities. Opportunities then become pain points, and then you can address them to capture a certain value of the market. Or it could be customer discovery, and that just means customer journey. You look throughout the life cycle of the journey and you identify, opportunities. So the life cycle of a journey could be from registration. If you are Amazon, it could be from registration all the way through to checkout. Are there any opportunities throughout that process? So from registering to searching to adding to cart to going to payment, are there any points that customers can drop out and just leave your browser and do this essentially and close it? Are there any points like that? If there are, those are opportunities. You address them. You find something to be done to address them. And you look at brainstorming. There are ways that various teams, use to do this. You can have your design sprints, your lean UX canvas, your solution document, and T-sizing. These are all, the various methods for, brainstorming solutions. Once you have a solution, there can be a way to validate the solution. So prototyping, design sprints, these are all a landing page. These are all several ways for validating those solutions. And here as a PM, your role is just, to facilitate, not to actually get involved, because we PMs, we don't have, the skill sets of, some do, but, it's not really in our core skill sets to start prototyping. It's not good use of your time. There are other things you could do with your time. And then in delivery, you look at scope and estimate. The execution itself, it just means how things are executed prior to, the development. So story backlog, Three Amigos, backlog refinement, all of these things we will do in this course. You have a hands-on experience in them. And lastly, measure and iterate. This is key. How do you get feedback? We live in a data-driven world now. Every idea must be validated, verified, and we need to ensure that it adds value to users. And we know so by analyzing the data. A/B testing is something that we will do in this course as well, as a means to help you. We will all have access to Google Analytics, so GA. It's something that majority of people in the industry use. So you have access to that, and you'll be able to see how A/B testing, how that functions, and how you could so whenever you join a project or a product and you're testing it, you have an idea of what's happening, and you'll be able to at least join the conversation. So one framework to show you is the design thinking framework. That's from here, Lean UX. This is what we will use in this course. So Uh, Ideas are sometimes very abstract. The abstract ideas is where you ideate. That's very abstract. You're thinking from scratch, like, how do we do this? But it's always sometimes easier to empathize. So these are concrete ideas. So seeing people suffer, seeing people like go through, some pain could help you to like, that's called an empathize. Could help you to think of a solution, a way to resolve that pain. Whereas if you're thinking, if I'm thinking that people are suffering from, lack of some people are unable to search, that is a very abstract idea. I haven't seen anyone, not search. So it's known as abstract. Whereas a concrete idea would be watching someone struggling to search. Then that would be, I see, if we did have a voice search, that person wouldn't go through that pain. So that's the difference from between your concrete and abstract. So if you're using this framework, we would have but all in all, these two ways will help you to like really understand the customer problem. Watching someone struggle with something, or actually perceiving that someone might suffer with something, that will give you the idea, that innovative idea, that so you think of a whole bunch of ideas, and that is known as your design thinking. So you can empathize or you can ideate. And as you ideate, you get to a point where, you then try to experiment. You don't just take the idea and think this is it, this resolves it. So you ideate on the problem, you have a bunch of ideas. Your abstract ideas and your concrete ideas, you can merge them together. We will do this in this course where we'll go through a problem and you will have the option of being able to use, either or, where you can, come up with a few ideas and we can move on from there. Okay, and the go-to market, I think I spoke on this earlier. This is a product launch where you essentially take an idea to live post-development. And it's something that it's done with your support. It's not something that's a PM. You have to be involved, so you don't have to lean on that so much. So the key ones are what we focus on so far to development. And in life, I also alluded to this. This is a lifetime of the product being launched and being used. So plan changes and subsequent projects emerging as a result of customers using that feature. So you being able to like find ways to optimize it during the lifetime of that product. So the lifetime of search by image right now it's here. I can always search by image. Amazon could decide, actually, let's remove this and keep it outside here. That's evolution of that feature. So that's anything I do during that time post-launch is known as in life. During the lifetime, I continue to optimize it, ensuring that that feature is successful. And one thing to keep in mind is can and do we monitor performance? For example, profitability. Can we trace our profit to people being able to search by image or being able to search by voice? Yes, we can, because we can track customers' clicks. So if someone searches by voice and then proceeds to buy the item, then that gets monitored. Now we know we have one purchase as a result of voice search. So we add those. In the end of the year, we can have we can make a decision to say, actually, having analyzed our voice search revenue, it seems we drew 20% revenue from voice search. So that tells us that if we didn't have that feature, possibly we might not have had that revenue. So that's a great decision to implement and invest on the project. End of life, I alluded to this earlier, is where you withdraw some features from the market, and by doing so, that means you won't no longer support it in the lifetime of your platform. So, what can we learn from this model? This is a framework that guides your thinking throughout the product development life cycle. And so, one of the key things that we should, keep in mind as PMs, we are a subset of business. So we have business skills and we also have tech skills. Tech skills means we understand how we can use technology to deliver value for the business. And our business skills is we understand revenue. We know that we need to make money, we need to make profit, not just make revenue, but we also need to make profit. And we need to use, these sums or these finances to fund our projects. And so from a business perspective, we need to ensure that the products that we're developing, that these products will be usable and therefore can support our business agendas as well as our tech agendas. So we wear two hats. We wear the hat of a business, so a business owner, and we do so when we're speaking with stakeholders within the business. We're speaking to someone in finance and they start telling us about how, we need to make more money. So we understand. We take that, we come up with ideas, and those ideas can then help us to, work with tech. If we see that some features are being wasteful and are not really helping us to, meet the agendas of making more revenue, then we cut them out and we make strategic decisions. So this framework is great for that. That's why we start with innovation. Do we have lots of innovative ideas? We need to just have them there. So solicit ideas from the company and just keep the ideas there. And when we have the resources, either we can build it ourselves or we can outsource it. And we also understand the importance of, working within agile, waterfall, or a hybrid. As I said earlier, hybrid, the agile, approach is something we do to deliver value immediately. Waterfall is it's old school and it's something it's probably most likely only with, government agencies because they believe in documentation. Most firms want to deliver value to customers immediately. And so you find waterfall in, government agencies that, they need evidence to support that when they ask for budgets. They need evidence. So the evidence could be a project scope or a product scope. And so you do more. You find that whenever you join a company and you join a private sector company or a public sector company such as a government agency, you find that there is more work to be done in the public sector because you write so many documentations, whereas in the private sector it's almost very minimal, almost nothing to write, but in just having conversations with the team. And we also understood the product development phases. We looked at the discovery process and how you go through that to really unpack ideas, and then how you take those ideas, uncover requirements, and then work with a business analyst to write the user stories, acceptance criteria, and then of course your engineers, your designers, and taking these to a sprint level. The sprint level just means the 2 weeks of value that is delivered. The team then plans it and implements those requirements for release. So we'll dive into this more. The next time we speak on this will be actually you doing. So I'm giving you like the insights of how these are done, but the next time we get to this, it will be you doing, actually going through this process with your own project at hand. So that will help you to solidify. So if you join a private company, you know how to write these documentations anyway, so you'll be fine. If you join a company that leans more towards waterfall model, and they have lots of documentations to write, you won't struggle because you have the skill set. You've done it, and in most cases, the documentations you produce in this class, you have them for life to always guide you, when you're in a role. And this is a product life cycle. we've gone through what it looks like from a development perspective, but from a market perspective, remember, as I said, we are product managers. We think business and we also think tech. So from a commercial perspective, when something is in the introduction phase, of course, is in terms of competition. If you're building a greenfield idea, so this is new. Let's take the example of Uber. When Uber was around, there wasn't anything such as that. Compared to now, we have Bolt, we have, you name it, we have it. We live in a world of copies. If you have an idea and it's successful, you will have you will have multiples of them in no time. So when you introduce an idea, if it's the first idea ever in your country or in the world in general, you find that give it a few months, others will copy. But generally, competition will not be much if it's a new idea. And the product will be very basic. Airbnb was very basic initially. Very, very basic. But as the product gets older, you find that things change, So in the first phase, you find that the pricing for it would be very low. Skim or penetration pricing are usually, these are like you offer it for like, let's say 1% of the actual price. So if the actual price would be 100%, you will offer it for 1% because you're not sure if people will buy it. And then you progressively, slowly, move up the price. But in the introduction phase, it's more about educating people, ensuring that people are aware of how that product, works. And as the product grows, then you then move in. You can see in the map, in the graph here, that the introduction is just showing the adoption of it. This early phase, only people that are tech enthusiasts would adopt. And as it slowly grows, the more people will hear of it. This was the case for Instagram. This was the case for Snapchat. This was the case for Facebook. Not many people adopt new technology initially. So slowly, when it gets to the maturity phase, then you start getting the much older generation, jumping in. But at this phase is where you get the majority of the market, signing up. If you can think back to when you had your first Instagram account, you can find out just by going on Instagram. You see that that will tell you if you are an early user or a late user, and if you're an early user, you're someone that was using Instagram, in that space of 2009, 2008, those were the early users. If you join post 2010, okay, still early, but you fall here. You're not early enough. So when you develop products, you have to think from how do we attract people? Because most people just abstain. They stay clear of trying new technologies or trying new features. You'll be surprised. How many people on Amazon have used search by image? Not many. Even though Amazon would have invested a lot of resources, so money, to have this feature here, yet most people won't even use it. It will probably be 10% of their estate that will use it. So as a PM, you have to think of a product life cycle. Think, where is your product? So where is Amazon's platform right now? You find that it's here. It's not in the decline, that's for sure. It's in maturity. So that would help you to think of, what sort of features to introduce on the platform. So if you join a new company, always ask them, where's our maturity? And do we have this mapped out somewhere? If they don't, it's something that you can map out so you can add value on day one. And as they say, first impressions, they matter. And so the questions that you ask, the things that you do on your initial onboarding would help you to stand out forever, permanently. And here it's just showing you what it looks like from a profits perspective. In the early release, you don't make any money. So your minimum viable product, that's the MVP, you're testing the market. You're getting, your product out there, but you're spending so much. So this is your cost, that's your revenue. You spend so much in the early phases, and your revenue is it's zero, borderline zero. It starts to go up as you get the early users joining the platform. In the case of Instagram, is more you have users now, so you can use that knowledge that you have users and go to advertisers and make a case that we have a lot of users on our platform. If you like to advertise to them, you pay this amount. And so you start making money from that. And then your cost of development stays the same, really. It doesn't really go up or down. It's just progressively, slowly, incrementally goes up, but it soon starts going down. So as you can see, as your revenue, with more users, with more advertisers, you make even more money. And so I'm using this with the case of Instagram, by the way. So with more users on Instagram, with more advertisers coming on board, you can see their revenue goes up even more. And then now, as we know, profit is revenue minus cost. So all of that is profit. And here we look at things like break even. This is stuff that I'll put it here for your own perusal, but don't worry so much about this. I'm adding this information because I know as a PM we are business and technical. So we think business, we also think technical. Are we making money on features that we release? So we have to think that way, so we can continually add value to our users. And similarly here, what happens when we stop, development? So end of life. There are consequences and implications. So we stop development. That means there will be no more support. We also stop selling. We also stop supporting, and we also stop the service. So completely, we cut everything out. And before I go forward, I say, any questions? Any questions, guys? Yes. Go ahead, say. You're on mute.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
Please, I want you to explain more on the agile approach. I seem not to understand very well the terms agile approach. I need more explanation on it.
Okay. Agile is a delivery framework. We'll get to it. Here is more like we're building up to it. So we don't just want to get to Agile. You've never heard a mention of it, and you have no idea how it functions. And then we start expecting you to be an expert. So it's not the case. So here in our session today, it was more around touching how Agile plays a role in the product development life cycle. So in the life cycle itself, you have your Agile, you have your waterfall, and if you're using the waterfall model, it means you're going through these phases. One second, let me share my screen again. It means you're going through these phases. You go through the ideation phase, you're done, and then you come to the development phase, you finish, and then you go to testing, you finish, and then you release. In Agile, we don't work in that manner. In Agile, we do a little bit of ideation, and then we quickly, do some a very quick,
Development.
do some quick development to just test. It's all about testing the idea. To test it, is it feasible? And then we do some testing of it, and we do a quick release. And the quick release would enable us to do something known as A/B testing, which I mentioned here. So we actually release it and get customers to use it and share back some data and tell us, wow, we really like this, or no, we don't like it. Yeah. Sorry, just gonna mute you for a sec. Yeah. So we show that to customers, and then that way we have real-time data to be able to make a decision whether to proceed with idea number one, idea number two, idea number three. So that's critical. So waterfall means we sit down, we do all the ideations, and then we pick one. And then we do the development for that idea all the way to the end, which could be 6 months. And then we'll come back to testing, which could be 3 months. So this is a very slow process. So agile just means how can we be fast on our feet to the market? Because, like I said, as product managers, we think business and tech. So the business side of our brain always says time to market, speed to market. Whoever gets to the market first will be known as the first to be there, and that has an impact. Any customer using, Bolt, for example, they know that it's a new service. It's not the same as Airbnb. It's not the same as Uber, for example. Uber is the originator of this model. They were there first. In some places they will always be, the favorite because they're first to market. Everybody else is just a copycat. So there's, that happens as well in tech, where some customers will abstain from your product because they believe you produce sub value to them. And first to market sometimes means you gain more customers, and so you don't really suffer from competition. And that's where, using the business side of our brains, we start thinking from game theory. How do you make the market difficult for your potential market entrants to enter the market? You can set your prices really low. Therefore, if they join, they will make a loss and leave. So you have all these strategies to you. But as a PM, remember, you're not involved in trying to set prices. You're using your insights that we need to be first to market, and therefore when it comes to scope, you can produce a quick and short and simple scope that the product team, that's your engineers, your QAs, your business analysts, your UX designers, your XD designers can take and implement really quickly, and do so in an agile manner. So agility is key, and that means being able to implement just really small sectors or small segments of things that can be tested quickly, and you get feedback. And because you get feedback, you can decide whether to release an idea, or you can decide whether not to. And that's where, and this is the agile approach, where you go through prototype and then the MVP. So here you do a quick prototype, understand the idea, and then you release a quick MVP. So you can see you're spending so much money already. You're making zero revenue. But because of the agile approach of doing an MVP, so this is lean. It's a lean development approach. Yeah, agile is all about lean, not having to do everything holistically at every product life cycle. And then that allows you to just do like the most optimal thing that will add value to customers, and then you quickly develop that and you launch it. And it also means that customers would always use an inferior product. As you can see here, the product will be basic, but it adds value because customers will be willing to pay for it. And the example towards that is your earliest testable product. Let's say customers want a way to be able to get from A to B. and you give them a skateboard. For you to deliver a motorcycle like this will be a while. It can take you 2 years. So you give them a skateboard. It takes them from A to B. So this is your MVP. And as a PM, you make these decisions, thinking, okay, well, we need to be able to get to the market as quickly as possible, because if we get to the market first, we would be known as the originator of the ideas, which carries a lot of, profitability in the future. So, and then your earliest usable MVP. So 2 MVP. Earliest testable MVP is this. Then your earliest usable. Usable is what most customers can actually use. Only some customers will be able to use this. But most customers know how to ride a bike. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes, makes sense. Everything makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Awesome. So I'll share this slide with you all, and then for next week, I think we gave everyone the break of not disturbing you on Christmas and New Year, but there will be an an assignment and also a test that will come. I think everyone should have the links to all of the classes. There will be a way to just ensure that everyone up to date, like you have an idea, you're really following the classes, and it's all making sense. So there'll be a quiz that will come through, and everyone will do it, and then we'll see where there are gaps in understanding, because here everything to date has been really giving you information, and we want to see how well you're digesting that information. In the next session will be a hands-on session where everyone will actually get to the doing, and that's what product management is about. It's about doing. So we actually get to be product managers and do some product related work. So keep an eye on that before Wednesday. Yes, go ahead. Right, Saeed. Okay. John, do you have a question? See your hand up.
Yes. So I noticed that most of the examples do with big companies, Fortune 500 companies. I would prefer to see more realistic companies. I won't say realistic, but mid-sized companies that probably be reachable and who can more connect with. And I want to know, I feel that probably the approach or probably the development cycle for a new product probably should be different from an existing product. And there's some experiences around how existing products probably when one gets in I feel there has to be some nuances around those. But is there some unique differences between a company where you entered and they're launching a new product and one where you have to get into an existing product?
Correct. Great question. Yeah, there's a big nuance. It's almost like it's a bridge. If you're launching a new product in a market, then it just means there are no platforms, there are no systems that exist. So you're building everything from scratch, and that's known as greenfield. It's a greenfield, it's new. It's a greenfield project. Whereas if you're joining Amazon, for instance, then it's different because they already have, a massive, gigantic platform that exists. So you're like a drop of water in an ocean, essentially. So also your impact is different. But in a greenfield project, in a new product or a new startup company, it will be completely different. So the activities, the product activities that you do are different, and you have to be much more hands-on. And yes, whilst this is a framework, so I shared today a framework, the framework remains the same. But the activities that you do, you could, for example, if you join, a big company or a small company, depending on how thorough things are done, it could be that most companies just skip the innovation phase. They say, we know what we're doing, so we don't need to go through it and prioritize an idea. We just pick one and that's it. So that the phases could be different. But ultimately, every company needs to have a development phase, because you need to implement the idea. So something like the development phase needs to be there. Your analysis phase has to be there. Your end of life. Most companies that you join, people don't speak of end of life. It's just done. Someone just gets up one day and says, shut it down, and that's it. But most, big companies would have an end of life, because you have, potentially millions of users using your products. You couldn't just shut it down. You need to have a downtime for like bringing it down. So you go through a usual process of communication and ensuring that everyone is clear that system would no longer be supported. And in small companies, then if you're a startup, then you could just decide you don't have enough customers that it will impact. As a result, you just shut down some features. It happens all the time. So it's being able to make those decisions as a PM, understanding the context, the dynamics of the company that you've joined, and then being able to introduce some good product thinking where needed. So in our classes, you will get all of the phases, all of the frameworks that would that will really help you. But you need to know how to use them, and then when presented with a circumstance, or let's say you're in a company, and you can then start thinking of how to unpack, how to move some of the frameworks and apply them to a startup environment, or how to apply some frameworks to a well-established company that already it's a well-oiled machine. So you're just coming to be part of the wheel, and so it's known the context, as you say, the nuances of when to use some frameworks and when not to. And we will see that in the examples, the hands-on examples that we'll be doing ourselves. And in our case, we would be applying them. We'll see that in the product analysis that we picked, we'll apply them there. So that's a big companies. And then in startup environment, because everyone in our classes is going to come up with an idea. So that's greenfield. So greenfield is your idea. You go from literally from nothing all the way to, let's say, delivery. So by all the way, I mean, we go through these key product life cycle and unpack the product related activities. What are the product things that if you join a company, in a startup company, what would they expect of you? And so those are activities that we'll do. We'll produce lots of documentation, market research. So you actually have to sit down and interview people. It could be friends in your life. You're asking them the service that you've created, or as we said earlier, interviewing people with questions that you've written down to get those insights, and then you then analyze it and start to unpack some product related ideas. And so all of these things, you put them in practice, and then by so doing, you will understand where some nuances may exist. And those nuances could be, actually, this is more applicable to a startup, and some are more applicable to well-established organizations. Hope that helps.
Yes, greatly. Thank you. Especially knowing that we'll probably be going through some of those practically.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's the key. So we've done a lot of theoretical work so far, and this is in week 3. So just to give everyone an idea of what we'll be doing hands-on. So from next week, it will be maybe 80% hands-on in the whole class. So everyone will really get involved, and then we learn by doing more. So we'll be doing, and then therefore those skills would be solidified in our understanding.
Thanks. Thank you.
Awesome. If there are no other questions, I'll say thank you guys, and have a great evening, afternoon, wherever you are, and see you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Appreciate
Bye
it.
bye.
Bye.
Next week.
See you.